Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Kudash. Double honors to apostles and elders of GMS who rule well. Peace, salutations to the Akim in the four corners, pushing truth for sincerity. Peace be unto you and Shalom.
What if instead of providing homeless shelters, food, and work programs for all homeless people around the country, we murdered them and harvested their organs so that we could save the lives of thousands of hardworking people who needed organ transplants? Haha, just kidding. But many think that this is what the idea of utilitarianism is all about. Doing actions that have a consequence that will do the most good for the most people. In this case, taking organs from people who do little for their community and giving them to people who do much for their community. But it's not quite as simple as organ stealing as you might think. Hello everyone, Thought Monkey here. Today we're going to explore the philosophy of utilitarianism, where it comes from, common misunderstandings, what it's all about, and the problem with it. In the mid-18th century, the philosopher and statesman Jeremy Bentham was born in England. This guy was straight up hippie for his time. He believed in freedom of speech, abolition of slavery, women's rights, gay rights. I mean, this is stuff that some people don't even believe in today. He also founded the idea of utilitarianism, the main principle being that the right action is the one that produces the most overall happiness. But here's where the misunderstandings come in. First, we have to define what Bentham and other utilitarians consider happiness or pleasure.
Now here's the first definition: hedonism. And it states the doctrine that pleasure or happiness is the sole or chief good in life, which is a doctrine or philosophy. You see it here in Babylon. You see it in the music. Drake has a song, YOLO, YOLO. You only live once. So just live up, have your the most fun you can, do coke, weed, whatever, hash, whatever makes you happy. That's what you're supposed to do. And that's what a lot of these elite believe in secret society. That's the whole purpose of life. And now, for some people, that's actually the best thing for you to do. I'm going to grab a precept to show that. So here, the Most High is saying, you about to be in slavery. The cup is about to pass to you. Be happy, rejoice. It's your kingdom. Live it up right now. Do whatever the hell you want to do, because you about to be going into slavery and then you're going to be destroyed. So that's the attitude that you should have. Unfortunately, that's the attitude that a lot of the world has. So they're off into all of these philosophies. So this is part of Esau's agenda. Now, the children of Israel, we were given the law, statutes, and commandments. Our purpose in life is to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. This is the whole purpose of why we're put on this earth, to fear God, to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments. And this is talking about Israel. We were given the laws, statutes, and commandments. No other nations received the laws, statutes, and commandments like Israel did. So God trusted us, and we're supposed to keep them. And by that, that's how we're going to be blessed, by keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. Not doing as your pleasure. Because the thing about living for pleasure is that you get into sin. Sin has pleasure component to it. If sin felt bad, nobody would do it. But because sin feels good, people do it. It feels good to be, high off of mushrooms or crack when you're going through depression. It feels good to sleep with another man's wife or woman if you desire her and you covet her. And she's been, a woman that you've been wanting since you've been in high school, and now she's available, but you got to sneak behind her back, her husband. Stuff like that feels good. It feeds the flesh. there's a lot of sin that feels good. You know, uh, trying to think of some other stuff that feels good. Pork. To some people, pork tastes good. When I was eating it, it tasted good. But you grow out of it. You realize you got to keep the law, statutes, commandments. And then all of a sudden you disdain it. So you're not supposed to live for pleasure. You're supposed to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. There's people that get high off of mushrooms. And they do it because it's all for pleasure. So that's what hedonism is. Now, utilitarianism, within utilitarianism, there is hedonism. But, however, they differentiate between different types of hedonism. And watch how confusing, how much this sounds like complete madness.
Some might think that this means they can watch porn, smoke weed, and eat Oreos all day. But that would be wrong. You see, the utilitarian has distinguished two types of pleasure. A higher pleasure related to our intellect, and a lower pleasure related to our senses. You see, it's not just how much pleasure we receive, but the quality of it as well. Kind of like in life. 10 okay cookies might not be as yummy as one extremely fucking delicious cookie. In utilitarianism, the delicious cookie is intellectual pleasure and is more highly valued than physical pleasure, the okay cookie. So if you're thinking about watching porn, try reading a book about particle physics or paleomagnetism instead. At the same time, our happiness is not just a selfish, individual kind of happiness, but rather communal. Everyone's happiness counts the same, and there's no room for prejudice or discrimination. It is the total amount of happiness that the masses has that counts. Think of it like this. The action that you do that gives the most amount of people happiness is the best action you can do. This might mean that you actually make sacrifices to your happiness in order to make others happy. So to put it in mathematical terms, it might look like the total amount of happiness in all people plus the right action to get the most amount of people happy equals utilitarianism. But there are problems to this idea. First, we don't all agree on what makes us happy. For one person, it might mean having a loving family. For another, it might mean playing World of Warcraft all day long in their pajamas downing cans of Monster. And for another, it might mean living in a cave somewhere in India. The second problem is after miraculously coming up with a consensus as to what happiness is, it's even harder to figure out what the right action is to arrive at such happiness. There is a famous thought experiment that goes something like this. There is a train speeding down the railroad. There is a switch up ahead. On one side, you have 5 people tied to the tracks, and on the other one, you have 1 person tied down. You are in a position to switch the track so the train runs over the 1 person rather than the 5 people. Would you do it? The utilitarian would perform the action that creates the most amount of happiness and would switch the track. 1 life taken is better than 5, right? But what if that one guy was a philanthropic humanitarian and the other 5 were just assholes? Well, shit, then you might have some disagreements. Could you reform the douchebags to become better people so that they could do more good than the one guy? Or maybe after this experience, the one good guy becomes an asshole because he realized that in spite of all his good guyness, he was still tied down to a train for some unknown reason and now wants to start living for himself. The problem with this is that in real life, we use utilitarianism in all kinds of different fields and do it to meet questionable ends. For example, in the medical field, we fund research into many minor problems like athlete's foot, when instead we could use that money to pay for the research of rarer but more serious diseases. In the business world, we make products in third world countries and pay those people essentially nothing so that the masses of the first world countries can buy cheaper clothes, chocolate, and coffee. So in this case, is the suffering of a few thousand cheap laborers worth the pleasure of millions of Starbucks drinkers? Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. Thank you for watching, and if you made it this far, please subscribe and give it a like below. Also, take a second to check out my Facebook and Instagram page to stay updated on what content I'm working on for my next Thought Monkey video.
Philosophy. That's all what this is. Utilitarianism, you see, is heavy in Babylon. Very heavy in Babylon. People who practice it don't even realize they're practicing it. Very heavily in Babylon. All of it is philosophy, is wine. You know, this LGBT, lesbianism, all that is philosophy. They're coming up with philosophical arguments to justify what they believe in. And now this is the definition of philosophy you see on the screen. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna read it. I'm gonna leave it up here for a brief moment. You can pause and read it yourself. But it's the love of wisdom. And now wisdom is the scriptures. So people in the world, they believe wisdom, you know, outside the Bible is wisdom. So this is what philosophy is. Your MGTOWs, all that is philosophy. You get into philosophical arguments, philosophical reasonings, you got to think according to the scriptures. Because there's only one truth. There is no philosophy. So Plato, Socrates, all that stuff and debating, all that is philosophy. And now you got philosophy in this truth as well. And you're not supposed to engage in it. This is Colossians 2 and verse 8. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Hamashiach. And it's easy to do that if you're not immersed in this water, which is the word. Any man can just tell you anything, and you'll just believe it. They can tell you that phylacteries is not part of the law. That's part of tradition. Anybody can tell you and come up with any doctrine. That's why you got to really know what's in this going on in this word. Eat this whole roll. And now here's the Greek word for philosophy again. The other one of etymology online. Here it is in the blue letter. Same thing. Love of wisdom. You have people who are just trying to be just too deep, trying to talk about how angels operate, how they work, and all that type of stuff. And calm that stuff down. Stop getting into all this philosophy and thinking. On that note, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaKakwadash. Double honors to the elders of GMS who were well. Peace, salutation to the Akim on the four corners, prison, truth, and sincerity. Peace be unto you and Shalom.